Seriously. You know, it's so funny because they say that really what you talk about is what you need to learn. So we are embarking about a 6 or 7 week series on mindfulness, which is so hugely funny because I am the most unmindful person that I know. So I am so glad we're doing this. But what we're going to do before I start, it's going to be a great series. We're having kind of an introduction to mindfulness today. Going to talk about that a little bit. Next weekend, Jeannie Ward is talking about mindfulness in healing. The week after that, we're going to have Red Turtle here, way fun, to talk about mindfulness in the Native American tradition. The next Sunday is Easter Sunday. We're going to be talking about renewal, rebirth, awakening. And on April 3rd, we're going to explore mindfulness from a Buddhist perspective. So that is going to be way fun. I'm in discussions to get a Buddhist monk here from a temple in Decatur, so we'll see if that works out. I'm hoping for that. On April 10th, we're going to do some mindfulness exercises. We're going to have a labyrinth walk. Do y'all remember our labyrinth? Mm-hmm. We're going to do that. We're going to do some other mindfulness exercises. And on April 17th, we're going to have another discussion to talk about our mindfulness practices. And that's a bit of a teaser, because what we're going to do at the end of this talk is I'm going to invite you to engage in a month of mindfulness, to select a practice and use it. And then at the end of that, we're going to come together and talk about our experiences and how it helped us, what we thought some of the advantages might be. Okay. So, as I was thinking about mindfulness, I started thinking about how often I go through my life being so unmindful. Let me give you an example. For those of you who know me or have ever seen my screensaver, I have a Yorkie. This is too bad because I have a wife and 3 children and my screensaver is my dog. Okay. Anyway, my dog's name is Bob, and I take her for a walk. Winnie Bob. Winnie Bob is Winnie Bob. And I take her for a walk every day. And I have the same route. I go out my house, I turn right, I go across Hembry Road, I go into the neighborhood across, I walk down, I go around the cul-de-sac, and I come home. It takes about 20 minutes. And I can do it in my sleep. That's a hint. About a week ago, I took her out and I went down and I was walking back and I realized that I had no memory of going around the cul-de-sac. I had no memory of going around the cul-de-sac at all. It was like I had been kidnapped by aliens. As I stand here now, I have no memory of going around the cul-de-sac, but I'm very sure I did it because I always do. So, I try not to live my life in an absolute dream state, but I think a lot of the times I do. And I think a lot of times we all do. Is anybody resonating with this, as we say? Yeah. Has anybody, for example, ever gotten in their car and you're going from point A to point B and you live at point A and you know point B and you get there and you remember that you don't even know how you got there? Show of hands. Yes. Okay, well that's pretty universal. Everyone with a driver's license out there is now raising their hands. So the good news is that our subconscious takes care of a lot of this, right? I mean, we don't drive into a tree. We get to where we're going. We know when to turn. We even stop so that we don't run into the guy ahead of us. It takes care of all that stuff. But what it also means is that we are running on autopilot. We don't notice. We get to where we're going, and sometimes it's pretty scary that we don't remember because we're driving a vehicle that weighs a ton. And that's a bad thing. But we are just going on autopilot. Far too much of our life is just done out of habit without thinking about it. And something happens when you're on autopilot. What happens? You are not really where you are. You are somewhere else. You are not where you are. You are absorbed in your thinking. If you're like me, you're kind of like in hum. You ever get that feeling? I don't know what it is about me, but my mind is constantly humming. This is when you find out way more about me than you want to know. But I'm doing an activity and there's this constant stream of things that I'm thinking about, and I'm not even aware that I'm thinking about it, but I'm thinking about it and I'm not focusing on what I'm doing. You think about what happened last week. You think about what happened last year. You rehearse conversations you're going to have tomorrow. You think about what your boss did. You think your mind is structured. Our minds are structured to think about everything except what is going on now. Aren't they? So, in The Power of Now, Eckhart Tolle writes about an awakening that he had many years earlier. And he says, have you ever listened to that book, the audio book of The Power of Now, or read it? It's a great book. It really is a wonderful book. And he is a wonderful thinker. But years ago, he said that he was in the midst of a suicidal depression, and he just could not stand going on anymore. And he remembers having the thought, I just can't live with myself any longer. I just can't live with myself any longer. It's like there's a crowd in there. And so he stopped and he thought, wait a minute. I can't live. Does that mean there are two I's? The I who can't live and the I that I can't live with. And he thought that means there are two. And then he thought, what if only one of them is real? And that did two things. It brought him out of his suicidal depression, and it changed our lives. It did three things. It gave us the power of now, and the works that he's written since then. So what he got in that epiphany, and parenthetically, that epiphany did not come from thinking. It just came from something in his subconscious which just came. But what he got is that we so often identify with our thinking. Because here in the West, we are creatures of thought. And so what we do is we assume that what we think about ourselves is who we are. I am this, I am that. We never just think I am. We assume that what we think about ourselves is really the depth and the breadth and the extent of who we are. And we are so wrong. We cheat ourselves, don't we? Think of it like the ocean. We have the waves of the ocean, we notice them, but that's not most of the ocean. Most of the ocean is the depths underneath, which support, which feed, which nourish the waves up top. That is how our minds are. Our thoughts are a tiny subset of our conscious. They're not the whole thing. They're just a bit, and we limit ourselves by thinking that they're the whole thing. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who was the author of our reading today, are y'all familiar with the work of Jon Kabat-Zinn? Great guy. He is the psychologist and meditation teacher who really did more than a great many people to bring the notion of Buddhist mindfulness to the West. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's the developer of mindfulness-based stress reduction. Have y'all heard of that? Mindfulness-based stress reduction. He's the one that came up with that and continues to teach it. He writes that mindfulness wakes us up from what he calls the cloud of forgetfulness. Isn't that a great image? The cloud of forgetfulness. Because I will tell you, when I was walking Winnie Bob, I was in a cloud of something. And I tend to believe it was a cloud of forgetfulness. We forget that we are here and we are now, and this is really all we have. That is an exhilarating notion because it gets through to the truth that we get to live right now. It's all we got. If we are going to grow, if we are going to learn, if we are going to find joy, we do it right now. I mean, think about it. It's impossible to feel grateful and not be right here, isn't it? It's impossible to feel joy and not be right here. Can you feel joy when you're thinking about? I mean, the joy is a present moment. We've all done it. We've all gone outside. We've all been absorbed in thinking about something, and then we see something beautiful. We see a cardinal. We see a bluebird. We see a rainbow. And all of a sudden, wham, we are right here and we are right now, and we are just filled with joy. It's because we noticed. Isn't that the truth? It's because we were brought back to the present moment by something that grabbed our attention and reminded us that our lives are right now. The past is over. It's just done. The future is only a possibility. It's an option. It's a hope. And we can't even control it. We don't know what's going to happen in the future. We try, but it hasn't happened yet. What we have is right now. We obsess over the past, we worry about the future, and the last thing we think about is what's going on now. Why is that? Because our brains just continue to hum, and they have to have something to feed on, just like a dog is chewing a bone. As the image totally gives us, we have to have something to chew on, and it's the past, and it's the future, and it's worry, and fear, and obsession, and it's everything but being where we are. We fail to connect with the lives that we are living. You know, it's funny, he has a passage about creativity. He has a passage about science. And he says that all true artists, whether they know it or not, create from what he calls a place of no mind, from inner stillness. He talked about a survey that was done of mathematicians and scientists. And the conclusion was that thinking plays only a subordinate part in the brief, decisive phase of the creative act itself. So he says that the scientists who cannot invent wonderful things or who can't be creative don't do it because they can't think, they do it because they think too much. Isn't that true? How many moments of inspiration have you had by just thinking about it? I gotta have some inspiration. I gotta have some inspiration by 11:30 because I gotta say something. No! How does it work? It works when we stop thinking. You know what I do sometimes? I will read a book. Seriously, if I want to get some inspiration or a creative thought, I will read a book and I will put it down and I will go to sleep and I will just say, mind, go to work. Bottom of the ocean, consciousness, go to work. Does anyone else do that? Because I trust that it will happen. And it does. There was a mathematician, I think I've talked about him before, he was French, his name was Poincaré, and that's what he did. He based his ability to come up with wonderful mathematical theorems on thinking about something and then going away and doing something else. And it would just come to you. Don't we know that it's true? It just comes to you. Definitely not because you're working at it, right? That's the way it works. So, permitting ourselves to quiet our thoughts, to kind of live in the gap. I almost named this talk Mind the Gap, like they do in Britain. You know how they talk about when you're meditating? You know, you quiet your thoughts and you focus on the gap. That is when creativity happens. That is when awareness happens. That is when joy happens, when we can tap into that consciousness that is below everything, when we can just take that monkey mind and put it in a cage and put a blanket over it and say, stop. I'm just going to connect with who I am because it's not that. There may be two eyes and I'm going to take the loud, obstreperous, intrusive one and I'm going to shut it down. And I'm going to focus on the true I, which is the one that gives me peace, that centers me, that gives me creativity and joy and wisdom and patience and compassion and all those other things. That is the challenge we face. So our challenge is to just turn off the hum, to somehow connect with being right here and right now and with who we truly are, because that's the only time and place we're going to find it. So that's kind of the balcony view. In one way, that's kind of the spiritual view, because that's what we try to do. When we go into the silence, that's what we here at One World and in many spiritual communities are trying to do. We're trying to connect with Source. We're trying to open our hearts. We're trying to find that deep place where peace lies and love lies, where we lie. That is the benefit of engaging in mindfulness and in meditation. That's the balcony view. That's kind of the spiritual view. For those of a more secular bent, there are also so many wonderful benefits to mindfulness. And I Googled them all. Okay, what I don't want you to do is get on the Google and just do mindfulness because your computer will burst into flame. So try to just limit it a little bit. Put some filters in there, whatever techies do. Anyway, the other benefit of mindfulness is that it is the best and perhaps the only way to observe those patterns and those habits that no longer serve you. You know, sometimes we think that mindfulness is just the joy of paying attention. Oh, what a lovely flower. But it's more than that. It's the way we become aware of what we are doing, what we are thinking, and we get the chance to ask ourselves, why am I doing that? Why am I thinking that? That is from the benefit and the practice of mindfulness. It gives us the option to make conscious choices about how we want to be, how we want to think, how we want to behave. In his book, The Here and Now Habit, and I credit Reverend Chris Kell because she sent this to me, thank you so much. The Here and Now Habit by Dr. Hugh Byrne. He cites a 2002 study by researchers Wendy Wood, Jeffrey Quinn, and Deborah Kashey. The study is called Habits in Everyday Life, Thought, Emotion, and Action. And what they did with this study is they tried to take a look at the conception we all have, I have it, you have it, that our lives are the result of our choices. I mean, we do that. We flatter ourselves. I make choices. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. I'm a creature of choice. I'm a smart woman. I make all these choices in my life. My day adds up to my choices. Oh, how wrong. That's not how it works. What they found is that almost half the time we do what we do because we've done it before. Right? We are creatures of habit. They said that between a third and a half of all behaviors are repeated in the same physical location each day. Bad news, folks. We are creatures of our monkey minds. We are in the cage of where our habits take us. This is kind of depressing. Because I like to think that I am a person of rational decision making. I'm now disabused of that notion. And my job is to disabuse you of it too. But we're going to fix that because we are going to become more mindful. Okay, so think about habits in your own life. Who here has no habits they would like to change? Okay then, I see no hands. These are behaviors that have become so automatic that we don't even think about them. Do you notice how you do the same things every day the same way? Seriously, and when you get older, it gets worse. So, you turn on your computer. You're worrying way more about me than you wanted to, so just let's keep it here. What is said at one world stays at one. Okay. You turn on your computer, and the first thing you do is you go to Facebook. Because that's way more interesting than what you were going to do. Right? You want to find out what your notifications are, who's responded to what you posted. You get a text, and you have to respond to it right now. Because it's way more important than like the actual carbon-based life form that's right in front of you. Got to respond to this. Excuse me, sorry mom, got to respond to this text. You walk in the house, you open a beer, you turn on the TV, you take a drink, you do whatever. We do all these habits. Every time you come to a light, you check your email. Who does that? I see some fingers. Who has emailed me in the 5 minutes between this light and the no one? But we do it anyway. So many behaviors are 100% automatic. We just do them. And that's what happens. Our brains are wired to do it. Our brains are just wired that way. So our task is to get control. We can control our brains. We like to think we're in control of them. We are so wrong. They are in absolute control of us, but we can change that through mindfulness, through focus, through awareness. We get frustrated at other drivers. How many people just get angry? How many people have knee-jerk reactions? You know, to total strangers, to family. You know, to whatever. We just get mad when people cut us off. Why? Or do we have a kidney in the back seat or something? Get over it. You know, seriously, it's okay. You can take the moment to take a breath. We are always on the go. We are ricocheting from one task to the next. We are always busy. We are always exhausted. But we are always with a list of things undone. Does that resonate with anybody here? Yes. We just feel like we're getting nothing done, but we are zooming, zooming, zooming. So what Byrne writes is he writes that mindfulness shines a light on what is happening in the present moment. Isn't that a great image? It shines a light on what is happening in the present moment. How you feel, how many of us stop to think how we feel? You know, somebody asked me the other day how I felt. They asked me what I like to do. I had no idea. I had to think about it for 10 minutes. I had no idea what I like to do. Because I never stopped to think about it. It gives you an opportunity to think about how you feel, what you're thinking, and to take a look at what you're doing. And it's not just a moment to appreciate something, to focus on something pretty. It's a chance to change. It's a chance to take those habits and change them. To change our behavior so that we show up in accordance with our highest values, because that's why we're here. There is no way we can show up as the person we were here to be unless we are paying attention. Right? Otherwise, our lives are going to go by and we're just going to have been in a fuzz and we won't know how we showed up because we are in hum. Mindfulness turns off the autopilot that leads us into these automatic behaviors. We reclaim our lives by shining that light on what we're doing. It's not hard. We just have to make the effort to do it, and we have to make the effort to do it every day, all the time. But after a while, the good news is, it gets to be a habit. Okay, so let's talk about mindfulness. Now that we've talked about the benefits, let's talk about mindfulness, because you hear mindfulness all over the place. I mean, you can't walk out into the world without hearing somebody's doing mindfulness. So let's talk about what it is. Okay. So back to Jon Kabat-Zinn. In his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, he defines mindfulness as follows. Mindfulness means paying attention in a particular way on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. On purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. In a lecture he gave several years back, he made a joke. He said his mindfulness practice, really, he called it much ado about nothing. Isn't that great? Much ado about, oh, Dr. Zen, that's much ado about nothing. What he meant, though, it's not about doing, it's about being. Or it's about what the Buddhists call non-doing. It's just about being here on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. So, in terms of paying attention on purpose, again, mindfulness is not just paying attention. It's much more than that. Let's go back to my walk. When I was walking Winnie Bob, and in those moments I had no idea what the heck I was doing, if somebody had said, Melanie, what are you doing? I'd have said, I'm taking a walk. I didn't think I was driving. I didn't think I was cooking a meal, God forbid. I knew that I was walking, so it's much more than simple awareness. It's paying attention on purpose. It's conscious direction of our focus. Think about that. It's conscious direction of our focus. And in order to do that, you got to turn off the hum. You got to make an effort, especially when you start. You got to make an effort to just do it. Turn off your mind and focus on what you are doing. It sounds so simple, but it requires some muscle. And over the next month, we are going to develop that muscle. Okay. Kabat-Zinn, he next focuses on the importance of paying attention in the present moment. In the present moment. He has a term for it. He calls it voluntary simplicity. Isn't that great? Voluntary simplicity, it means instead of, if you're like me, attempting to squeeze everything into the 5 minutes you have before you have to go. I can do this, I can do this, I can do the following 14 things. I can wash the dog, I can feed the kids, I can vacuum the house, and I still got 4 minutes. No, it's saying no. It's keeping things simple. It's doing what you have time to do. It's focusing on it in the present moment. Voluntary simplicity. Give yourself time to do that one thing fully. Remember that phrase. I love that phrase. I've been going around explaining that to people. Voluntary simplicity. Multitasking is out. I told you a few months ago, I read an article in the Wall Street Journal a couple of years ago. It was called, Multitasking Makes You Stupid. I just love that. It's so true. Because multitasking does not mean we're doing a lot of things well. It means we're doing a lot of things very badly. Because if you read the research, our minds can't do that. We can do one thing at a time. So what happens in our culture, in our technology? We have iPhones that are pinging, ringing, dinging, whatever the heck they're doing, constantly calling our attention to them. An email or a call comes in, we drop everything to answer it, because the way our brains are wired is we confuse the recent with the important. We really do. We confuse what is recent with what is important. And that is something we have to be aware of, because just because it's recent doesn't mean it's more important. Kabat-Zinn finally teaches that mindfulness involves paying attention non-judgmentally. This is what some people call an emotionally non-reactive state. So what does that mean? We see what is happening and we don't get our emotions tied up in it. We let the good happen, we let the bad happen, and we know that it's all going to pass and we don't get involved. We just see it come and go. That is the observer in us. He writes, when we let go of wanting something else to happen in the moment, we are taking a profound step toward being able to encounter what is here now. Now, if you're like me, and if you're going through life and you're engaging in life's activities, half the time I want something else to happen. Don't you notice that? That my son hasn't gone to bed yet. I want him to. This is happening. I want this to happen. This isn't quite right. I wish this was happening. That's the way we view events. We try to judge them. We try to control them. We are never happy with the way they are. We never just sit with the way they are. When we accept that it's just happening as it's happening, that is when we are in the present non-judgmentally. Like everything else, it gets easier the more we do it. Okay, so what is mindfulness not? We've talked about what it is, so what is it not? It's not simple awareness. It's also not the practice of sitting meditation. I think sometimes mindfulness just gets confused with sitting meditation. Don't you find that? You know, we think if we're engaging in mindfulness, we have to like close the door and sit down and close our eyes. No. Meditation is a really important tool, but mindfulness is a way of living. Mindfulness happens when you've gotten up off the chair, when you are not in your room with the candle lit and your mantra. Mindfulness is the way you live your life every day. That's what makes it a valuable tool. Have any of you seen the interview that Oprah Winfrey did with Thich Nhat Hanh? Okay, a few of you have seen it. She asked him if he meditates every day. And he said, yes, we try to do it not only every day, but every moment. While drinking, while talking, while writing, while watering our garden. It's always possible to practice living in the here and now. That was his answer to the question, do you meditate every day? That's how he does it. His life is a meditation. That is mindful living. Any activity can be done with mindfulness, anything, can't it? Talking on the telephone, driving a car, visiting with friends, anything. You can use any activity to expand and enrich your mindfulness practice. What does it take? It takes focusing our full awareness on purpose in the present moment without judgment and using what Kabat-Zinn calls beginner's mind. We've heard of that, correct? It's a Buddhist concept, the notion of beginner's mind. He says he had a Zen teacher who called it don't know mind. I don't know, because I haven't had that experience yet. And that's the attitude we have to take. We have to take an open curiosity. We have to take, what's next? Tell me what this is. What's going on? We have to come at it with a mind that we don't know what's going to happen. Because if we come at it with any other mind, when we assume things are going to happen, what happens? We load it with our assumptions, with our judgments. We don't see what is. We see it through a filter of what we think it should be, right? Or what we think it's going to be, or what it was last week. We can't do that. We have to see it with a curious, open mind to see what it is now. So Kabat-Zinn built his mindfulness program on the practice of meditation. And he's one of the ones who started it, but since then, a gazillion people obviously teach mindfulness meditation. There are centers that study it, practitioners, healthcare practitioners practice it. It's even made it into the corporate world. As a matter of fact, it's huge in the corporate world. I've read a bunch of articles about its use in Silicon Valley, and actually it's kind of being co-opted, not so much to bring us inner peace, but really to give these companies a return on investment. So this teaches us because it makes you more focused. It reduces your stress. So this teaches us really that mindfulness is a tool, and you get to use it for whatever end you want to use it. So back to meditation. Kabat-Zinn writes that meditation is the process by which we go about deepening our attention and awareness, refining them, and putting them to greater practical use in our lives. It's the systematic cultivation of wakefulness, of present moment awareness. The systematic cultivation of wakefulness. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean thinking, man, I wish I was more awake. I wish I wasn't in such a coma all the time. No, it's the system, I really do. It's the systematic cultivation of changing that behavior. And we can do it. And the way we start is with a meditation practice. And if you are not engaged in one, in about 5 minutes you're going to wish you were, because I'm going to tell you some of the science behind it. It's two things. It's wonderful and it's scary. Okay? So, years ago we were taught that by the age of 5 your brain had already established all its neural pathways, and that as you grew, your brain could never heal. If you were to ever have a drink, you wouldn't know your name by the time you were 50, and your brain could no longer heal itself. Remember that? The brain was it at the age of 5 and you were done. Everything was all downhill after that. Okay, now we are introduced to the concept of neuroplasticity, and we know that that is no longer true. We know that the brain can rewire itself, that new neural pathways can form, that new connections can be made, and the way this happens is through our experience and our environment. Even at ages 50, 60, and above, your brain can still change. It just depends how we use it and what we put into it. Meditation is one of those brain-changing activities. It changes the way our brain functions, and it changes the connections that exist. It can promote improvements in mood, health, behavior, cognitive functioning, decision-making. It rivals, the benefits of meditation rival those of exercise and good nutrition. Literally, I've heard people say that. Now, how many years have we all been getting on treadmills? Many, many years. Running at 6 o'clock in the morning. Okay, that's good for us. We need to keep doing it. But the benefits of a meditation practice rival that. So I would take a deep breath and think about that. It is true. Technologies like the MRI enable us to literally see brains while they're meditating. I tried to find a picture of brains on meditation, and when we post this in the blog, I'm going to put a picture up there. But you can see that this area that was red or that was black is now red because neurons are firing. You can see activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is where our executive functioning and our decision making happens. You can see changes in the amygdala, which is where our stress is. Long-term meditators have amygdalas that get smaller because you get better at monitoring your stress reactions. This is not just something that makes you feel better, it changes your brain. You can see on these instruments, you can see the brain firing in different ways. You can see new connections happening. In 2005, a doctor named Sarah Lazar of Harvard University and Massachusetts General Hospital, she showed that practitioners of insight meditation had measurably thicker tissue in the left prefrontal cortex, which is the area of your brain used for cognitive and emotional processing and well-being. Now, the meditators in this study were not monks that she just dug up and measured their brain. These were people like you and me. These were people who lived in Boston, who went to work, who had families, who hadn't been meditating forever. They probably meditated about 40 minutes a day, and their brains showed these changes. That is exciting stuff. In 2009, neuroscientist Ellen Luders of UCLA reported that when she and her team compared the brains of meditators with those of a control group of non-meditators, the brains of the meditators contained more gray matter. We've all heard of gray matter. Don't we all want more gray matter? We want to get rid of fat, we want more gray matter. That's how life works. Okay? The brain tissue responsible for high-level information processing than did those of the non-meditators, especially in those areas of the brain associated with attention, body awareness, and ability to modulate emotional reactions. Okay, so what happens when you meditate? That guy cuts you off on 400, what do? You smile. You feel better. You don't go nuts. Your amygdala doesn't start firing out whatever the heck it does and create stress. It changes the way you live your life. Dr. Richard Davidson says that emotions, and particularly happiness, can be thought of in the same way as a motor skill. Isn't that cool? You can learn it. You can develop it the same way we learn to play the piano or to tie our shoes. We can work at it and we can learn at it. Dr. Davidson found that meditation changes the way the brain works so that we can become more compassionate. Psychiatrists know that meditation can alter those reactions. Like medication, meditation helps anxious, depressed, compulsive mind to focus. It helps with depression, it helps with ADD. I could go on, but I'm not going to. You kind of get the idea. The other good news, no, Melanie, go on. No, please. The other good news about meditation is there's really no wrong way to do it. How many of us have started with meditation and we can't calm the mind? We're like, I keep thinking, I'm doing laundry, I'm cooking, I'm walking, I can't stop. That's the good news because that's what you're supposed to do, because the purpose of mindfulness meditation is to train us to notice those thoughts and to let them go, to bring our focus back to our breath, to our mantra, to our candle, to whatever we're focused on. If we immediately started meditating and we didn't have any thoughts that we had to worry about, we probably wouldn't be doing it wrong, or else we'd be the Buddha. Those are our two options. I don't know about you, but I'm with A. I'd be doing it wrong. Okay? So it's practice. That's what we do. We focus on whatever, and we bring our minds back when our thoughts wander. That's how we learn to focus our attention. That's the skill that we bring into the real world. When we are faced with so much stimulus we don't know what to pay attention to, that helps us focus on what we need to pay attention to. So, what I would like to suggest is that we challenge ourselves over the next 6 weeks. Let's pick a meditation practice, if you don't have one already, and let's all pick a mindfulness practice, and let's just do it, if you don't already. And then let's regroup on April 10th or whenever it is, and let's talk about it, maybe the 17th. Let's talk about the successes we've had, the experiences we've had. And so what I did is I went hunting for some mindfulness practices. And I found this month's issue of Science of Mind magazine. Do y'all get Science of Mind magazine from Religious Science? It's really good. Okay, I recommend it. It's really pretty good. And the guy who wrote this, who's a guy named Alfred James, came up with 6 mindfulness practices. And I'm just going to zoom right through them and suggest that you might want to pick one. Or you can find another one. The first one is mindful breathing. What this requires is that you just stay still. And you focus on your breath for 1 minute. Okay, we all have 1 minute. You are still, you focus on your breath as it comes in and as it goes out. You purposefully watch it. Mindful breathing. You do that several times a day, just try it. That is one option. The second is that he picked was mindful observation. What we do there is we choose a natural object, just somewhere, a flower, a bird. Well, a bird would not be good because it would take off. A flower, a tree, something that is beautiful in your natural environment, and just focus on watching it for a minute or two. Give it your full attention. Become absorbed by it. Look at the way it moves. Look at the way the light shines off it. If you're close enough, see how it smells. Absorb yourself in this item. Just notice it fully like you have never seen it before. And do that for a minute or two. It could be the clouds, it could be the moon, it could be whatever you consider beautiful. Look at it for a minute or two like you have never seen it before. Full attention. The next option he gives us is called mindful awareness. And this involves heightened awareness and appreciation of simple daily tasks. Do you all remember the story of Brother Lawrence, the Christian monk who what he did is he went to the monastery and all he did was wash dishes. But he did it with such mindfulness and awareness and joy that pretty soon everybody in the monastery was going to go look at Brother Lawrence to see how he did it, what peace he had, what joy he had, how he took this mundane, nasty job of washing dishes and just transformed it by his attention and by his absorption and by his understanding that it was a needed, a wonderful thing to do. Take a task, a daily task, and just focus on it for the period of time in which you're doing it. What you can do is you can establish what they call a touch point and become aware of it. It can be when you turn on your computer, become aware of putting your hands on the keys for a few minutes and just be aware of how that feels. When you open a door, become aware of how it is when you grasp the handle, what it feels like. Is it cold? Is it hot? Just be aware of it. And it doesn't even need to be something physical, he says. It can be a thought. If you get a negative thought into your mind, be aware of it. Ask yourself, why am I thinking that? What is it? What is going on in my mind? And consciously just let it go. So pick for yourself a touch point. If somebody wants a copy of this article, I can sure give it to you or show it to you. The next is mindful listening. And what this does is this opens your awareness in a non-judgmental way. So take a piece of music. Take a piece of music that you've never heard before. Put it on and just listen to it. And don't go in with any preconceptions or judgments. Just be open to it. The melodies, the harmonies, how loud it is, where it goes, how it makes you feel. Just become totally absorbed in this piece of music. Don't try to identify it. Don't call it classical or rap or whatever. Just listen to it and become mindfully absorbed in that piece of music. Explore it fully. And the last one he talks about is mindful immersion. And this one involves being fully occupied, again, in a daily task. Whatever it is. Like Brother Lawrence washing dishes, driving. Don't just do it, like I do so much of it, completely in a hum. Pay attention to it. Be grateful you're doing it. Ask the purpose for which you're doing it. Ask who benefits from you doing it. And just be fully aware of how your body feels, how hot the water is, what your muscles feel like, if it makes you sweat. There are so many aspects to these tasks that we do, and we miss so many of them. So just bring your mindfulness, your awareness, to a simple daily task. Okay, so what I would like to do, oh, the last one, I forgot one more, sorry. Mindful appreciation. You're all thinking, she said 6. And I've only heard 5. I was a theater major, so counting was not important. Okay, mindful appreciation. The last one is notice 5 things in your day that you normally don't notice and tell yourself how you appreciate them. Just notice them. They can be objects, they can be people. It gives us the opportunity to just take a look at what is in our lives and what is around us and what it does for us. So just, it's kind of like keeping a gratitude journal, but it's a little more intense than that. You just examine every aspect of those things that you are thankful for. So, let's do this for the next month. We are embarking on several weeks of talking about so many aspects of mindfulness. This is kind of a foundation. But what we're going to do is over the next few weeks, we're going to flex those muscles. We're going to build those neurons. We are going to come out with a greater appreciation of living here, of living now, of all the infinite possibilities that are right in front of us and that are presented to us right now that we so often miss. So let's do it. Let's take these thoughts into